You just sent me a text.
She did to me too. I
Thank
don't
you,
want. I don't want this one. I want this one.
I want some. Who's on? Who? Who else is on here? That's there.
Judy Vasquez. I'll try it for the next one.
I'll put you on my phone.
What happened to you?
Okay, Mayor, we are ready.
All righty. Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank everyone that's with us this evening. At this point, I'd like to open up the agenda, the Baldwin Park City Council Special Virtual Meeting. Today is August the 5th, 2020, and the time is 5:04. So at this point, I believe that our Deputy City Clerk, Ms. Morales, is present. If she could take, Ms. Morales, are you present?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor Lozano.
Present.
I'm sorry, let me go first with the council members. Council Member Avila.
Here.
Council Member Ayala.
Here.
Council Member Garcia.
Here.
Put your mask up so they're going to criticize.
Mayor Pro Tem Hernandez.
Present.
And Mayor Lozano.
Okay, present. Thank you very much. So I'm here with Councilmember Gina Ayala. Her computer is down, so we're trying to keep our distance here. All right. So at this point, public communication, Madam Deputy City Clerk, do we have any input, input from the community?
I do. So the deadline to submit input for the 5 o'clock meeting is 3 o'clock. We did submit, I'm sorry, we did receive a few after the deadline, and I will forward that to all the council members. So I will start with Ms. Beatriz. And let me go ahead and place that call now.
Welcome to Verizon Wireless.
Oops, sorry. Let me try that one more time. Sí, Miss Beatriz, es Lourdes.
¿Aló?
Sí, buenas tardes, Miss Beatriz, es Lourdes. Le estamos dando 3 minutos para hablar. Puede hablar ahora.
All right, thank you. Gracias.
Thank you, council members of Baldwin Park and other staff of the Baldwin Park staff. I'm talking about on behalf of the project HomeKey. As a resident and also as in behalf of everyone and United Way organizer, I would encourage you to approve this project HomeKey. It's very kind to have this in this moment, have this particular project in our city. We have a lot of needs because COVID-19, but also we are before COVID-19, we have the needs in our community. I've been in support of the many household people in our community, and we are trying to looking for one place to live, and we don't have enough success, not because we don't have enough time, it's because we don't have enough resources. So a project HomeKey can help many of the residents, household residents, especially the residents over 65 years old, who recently the homeless count in January showed them more than 23% of the new housed people was seniors. So that project can be amazing. I think so. This is more. This is a one compassionate and good visionary decision to take home Cape project here in Baldwin Park. Also, we personally, as everyone in and as president, I talked to personally with Governor Gavin Newsom about to bring more housing to our communities. You was in the meeting, we explained here that need. So I encourage you to approve the acquisition of the Motel 6 in Baldwin Park. I want to say I can bring more support from our community. I know they have been in many meetings with us and they express their concern, but also they're willing to help these unhoused individuals who are in Baldwin Park Street, but also in LA County. We have more than 5,000 individuals in, 5,000 individuals in San Gabriel Valley, but we have more than 500 individuals in Baldwin Park.
Okay, all right, thank you. The time is up.
Ms. Beatriz, I'm sorry I'm sorry, Ms. Beatriz, the time is up. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Do we have another call? Thank you. Thank you very much, Beatriz. Appreciate that.
Yes, the next call is from Scott Chamberlain. And let me call him
Chamberlain?
now.
Okay, oh, go ahead.
Hello, this is Scott.
And how are you? This is Manuel Lozano, Mayor of Baldwin Park. We're calling you and you're now live for public communication.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
You're
My
welcome.
name is Scott Chamberlain, the Executive Director of the San Gabriel Valley Consortium on Homelessness. And we exist to be able to educate and to support and collaborate agencies together. And we have 3,000 stakeholders. And every month we gather about 100 people to be able to resolve homelessness and to discuss. And I just want to thank you as leaders in the city of Baldwin Park for your support of Project HomeKey. And I know there's no action tonight, but I just wanted to thank you so much for all of your support. And as we're creating this pipeline of bridge housing and permanent supportive housing, the acquisition of the Motel 6 would be a great step in the right direction. And we have seen so many amazing testimonies of people getting into housing, getting their life back together in stable situations, and keeping them off the streets so that COVID not only is good for that resident, that neighbor, but also good for our cities. And so thank you so much. The consortium is here to be able to support you and to be able to educate and connect with residents in Baldwin Park to help to resolve and prevent homelessness. And so thank you, leaders of Baldwin Park, for your courageous support of this project and helping into the future. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chamberlain. Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Deputy City Clerk, we have an additional call.
We do. We have Richard Hopkins.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Hopkins?
Yes.
Oh,
No, not yet. I'm sorry.
yeah, thank you.
Hello, Richard Hopkins.
Hey, Mr. Hopkins, this is Manuel Lozano, Mayor of Baldwin Park. We're calling you. You have your 3 minutes. You wanted to share something in public communication?
I did send a comment, but if you'd like, I will speak. Go
Absolutely.
from there.
Thank you.
I am president of the East San Gabriel Valley Coalition for the Homeless, based in Hacienda Heights. And within the past 4 or 5 months, the Motel 6 was taken over by the state. It has 152 rooms. The occupancy currently is about 180 to 190. On a daily basis, they get 3 meals. They have security, 3 individuals, as well as 3 nurses at the facility, and it's done quite well. We've not had any problems as far as the community goes. and would like to have the city endorse it, be able to assist the homeless within the San Gabriel Valley, but particularly in Baldwin Park. I don't know if you're aware, but in January of 2020, the LASA had the homeless count, and within the San Gabriel Valley, there are 4,555 homeless individuals. And I believe that the Project HomeKey would be a valuable asset to the community in a variety of ways. And so I would love to have this, the community to be able to endorse this, and take additional people off the streets, providing them information as well as services, so that how long the service period would be would give them some confidence, and also eventually to have a placement within perhaps in Baldwin Park, as well as within the San Gabriel Valley.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your input.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you very much. All righty. Deputy City Clerk, do we have another?
Yes, we have one more by the name of Annie Miske.
Thank you.
Hello, Ann speaking.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Manuel Lozano. I'm the mayor of the city of Baldwin Park. We're calling you for input, and this is your opportunity.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Ann Miske. I'm the CEO of Union Station Homeless Services, and on behalf of them, I'd like to thank the council for the opportunity to speak about the Motel 6 conversion. We have been incredibly honored to be part of the life-saving and transformational initiative that is Project HomeKey, which seeks to keep vulnerable individuals safe from COVID by getting them indoors to hotels. As a result of our experiences there, but also because of our almost 50 years experience in permanently housing people experiencing homelessness, I would like to speak in favor of the purchase of the Motel 6 for conversion to permanent supportive housing. This is now part of Operation HomeKey, which will seek to get 15,000 Angelinos off the streets. I also want to say a special thank you to the County of Los Angeles and Supervisor Hilda Solis, who's been an incredible champion for this initiative and for ending homelessness across our region. You know, we all agree that we've seen a dramatic rise over the past few years of people experiencing homelessness, and we know that people are very fearful when they see those who are homeless on the streets. But what most people don't realize is that when housed with dignity, and especially with the appropriate services, people's lives are transformed. You wouldn't know these people had at one time been homeless. What we've seen with Project HomeKey is that many people who were hesitant about accepting services were glad to get into the hotel rooms. And since we've been sheltering them, many have gone on to permanent housing. So we know, however, that what stands in the way of ending homelessness is the lack of permanent housing. And that is what it takes to get people on the path to stability and wellness. So motel conversions are a wonderful way of providing this housing in a way that is much more cost effective and faster than developing buildings from scratch. And it's also a wonderful and short-lived opportunity for communities to take advantage of the funding to purchase and convert these motels. I know that we at Union Station are looking at doing a number of these. So I ask that you please consider purchasing the Motel 6. In the many years I've been working in this field all across the country, I've seen the amazing transformation that supportive housing brings, but not just to those experiencing homelessness, but to the community as a whole. Permanent housing brings hope, and it creates a healthier and safer community. Again, not just for those experiencing homelessness, but for the entire community. Again, thank you very much, Council, and I urge you to consider purchasing the Motel 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Madam Deputy City Clerk, any others?
Those were all that were received before the 3 p.m. deadline. I will forward all the other ones to the City Council for their review.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Alrighty. So,
Mayor, really
yes, go
quick.
ahead. Yes.
Ms. Alejandra, Father Mike had sent us a message that he wasn't going to be able to be at the meeting, but he wanted his public comments read.
Sure, absolutely.
Lola, do you have that in front of you?
1 second, let me pull it up.
Would you mind reading it, Lulu, please?
Yes, let me just pull it up from, I'm
I
sorry,
appreciate-
from Father Mike.
Yes, from Father Mike. He texted to us, but I know he wanted it read at the meeting.
Was it sent to the public comments email?
If not, we can read it at 7 o'clock to make sure that we have it.
He said he read it, he sent it, yes. Oh, well, yes, we could do that. We could read it for the 7 o'clock meeting.
Right, so perhaps you could email it to Lulu, Councilmember Avila?
It's in a text. You have it in a text as well.
Okay,
If somebody, as long as you could share it, that's all that matters.
I do have it if you wish for me to read it now, or if you wish.
Oh, perfect, just do it now.
Okay.
Yes, please, Lulu. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear members of the Baldwin Park City Council, the mission of the St. John the Baptist is walk with people in light of God. To meet this moment, my parish sees that we must tackle the many challenges resulting from COVID-19 together. Specifically, I commend Governor Gavin Newsom and the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors leadership to purchase hotels and motels as part of Project HomeKey to provide permanent supportive housing to people experiencing homelessness. Every single community was affected by the homelessness crisis prior to the COVID-19, and now more than ever, that crisis has been exacerbated by the public health pandemic. People experiencing homelessness are members of our community. According to the 2020 homeless count, there were 5,082 people experiencing homelessness in the San Gabriel Valley, 555 of them identified in Baldwin Park. That number is expected to increase with the economic turbulence. This means we must collectively support all efforts to secure rooms to house our most valuable neighbors. Compassion and collaboration countywide are the linchpin to bringing hope. Additionally, we care deeply about continued efforts to flatten the curve of COVID-19 by extension and ensure hospital capacity. By allowing people to remain unsheltered, our neighbors will be at more risk of contracting COVID-19 and hospitalized. Without the purchase of hotels or places for shelters in the San Gabriel Valley, people who are unsheltered will suffer, and we all will suffer. The COVID-19 crisis has made clear that our individual health is intricately linked to the health of our neighbors, sheltered or not. Baldwin Park must do its part. To that end, I urge you as a representative of the City of Baldwin Park to meet this moment and support all efforts to bring additional sheltering capacity through hotels and motels or other venues for shelter to prevent further spread of COVID-19. Baldwin Park leaders need to step up and share space with the neediest. The 10,000 families of St. John Baptist Church and her community organizing arm, LA Voice, supports the efforts of the Governor Newsom and of Supervisor Solis. Please contact me if the parish can provide additional information. Sincerely, Father Michael D. Gutierrez, pastor of St. John the Baptist, Baldwin Park.
Thank you, Lulu. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that input. All right. So at this point, we'll go ahead and end the public communication aspect of it. And I just want to set the agenda, just so everyone is aware. So we have the open session, which is a new affordable senior housing development proposal by the Retirement Housing Foundation, 14513-19 Central Avenue, by Director of the Community Development Services, Benjamin Martinez. We also have recess to closed session, which is public employee. Number 2, conference with legal negotiator. And we also have 3, conference with legal counsel existing litigation. Item 4, real property negotiation pursuant to Government Code 54956.8. And we also have item 5, which is again, the conference with legal counsel anticipated litigation. All right. So at this point, we're going to go in.
Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Mayor, excuse me. The LA County Supervisor's Office would like to give a presentation regarding the project HomeKey. This item came up after the posting of the agenda, and I understand it is urgent due to the application process for funding. So we would ask the council to motion and vote to add this item to the agenda.
All right, so at this, I will move to go ahead and place the county representative on the agenda for discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Avila. Any objections? Seeing none, so moved. So at this point, can the representative please introduce themselves or whoever the person is?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, legal counsel.
where are we going to put that on the agenda? What item is that now?
That's the item to discuss the housing by LA County representative from Hilda Solis's office.
Okay, so we're going to just put that under presentations.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. All right, so at this point, do we have the representative?
Yes, thank you, everyone. This is Judy Vasquez, Senior Advisor to Supervisor Hilda Solis.
Thank you, Judy.
And on behalf of the supervisor, I want to thank the council for creating this space to discuss Project HomeKey. The supervisor has always appreciated the support of the city of Baldwin Park as the county works to address homelessness in the San Gabriel Valley and across the county. And Project HomeKey is the latest in these efforts that the county is leading. So today joining me, I have Kelly Quinn, manager of the Master Planning Unit in the CEO's Asset Management Branch. And then I have Phil Ansell, who's the director of our CEO Homeless Initiative. I would like Phil to go ahead and give an overview of what Project HomeKey is and the county's application. And then we're open to answer any questions from the council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. As you've heard from several of the public comments, Project HomeKey is the next step in Governor Newsom's effort that began with Project HomeKey to enable people experiencing homelessness who are particularly vulnerable to hospitalization or death if they contract COVID-19 to be safe. Specifically, the target population consists of individuals who are 65 years of age or older, or who have a health condition which makes them particularly vulnerable, such as diabetes or heart disease. So as you know, the county has worked aggressively to implement Project HomeKey. As part of the fiscal year 2021 state budget, the legislature and the governor agreed to allocate $550 million in federal coronavirus relief funds allocated to the state through the Federal CARES Act. These funds must be expended by December 30 of this year, and the $550 million allocated for Project HomeKey is specifically to enable counties and cities to acquire properties to provide interim or ultimately permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness. The principal focus of Project HomeKey is on the acquisition of hotels and motels, though other sorts of properties are also eligible for acquisition, such as board and care facilities and apartment buildings. And the primary focus is for the properties to ultimately be used as permanent housing. And within that, specifically, they're not exclusively, but with a particular focus on permanent supportive housing, which is permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness, typically long-term homelessness with a disability, who need intensive ongoing services and an ongoing rental subsidy. So the initial application deadline for Project HomeKey is August 13th. The county is working very diligently to submit as many applications as we can to purchase hotels and motels from willing owners of hotels and motels. Our plan then is, if the state approves our application, we then will need to actually acquire the hotels and motels by the end of December. We anticipate then that for an initial period of time, that will be likely between 18 and 24 months, though that is not set in stone. We would operate the hotels and motels as interim housing sites, as shelters, similar to the current Project HomeKey sites, except that we would no longer having to be paying an occupant, paying for the use of the hotel itself, because it would then at that point be owned by the county. And then we envision that we will undertake whatever level of rehabilitation or renovation is needed for the hotel and motel to convert it into permanent housing. And the most common form of renovation required will be the addition of kitchens or kitchenettes, which would then convert those hotel rooms or motel rooms into essentially single or studio apartments, each with their own bathroom, kitchen, or kitchenette. And our best estimate would be that sometime around July of 2022, the sites could be used as permanent housing, where people who had been in the sites as interim housing may be able to stay, or other eligible individuals experiencing homelessness would be matched and provided the opportunity to become tenants in permanent housing in the hotel or motel. So I'm happy to, both Kelly Quinn and I are happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yes, this is Daniel Lozano, the Mayor of Baldwin Park. Out of curiosity, question I have, will this be focused? I mean, I think the idea is great. Will this be focused primarily for Baldwin Park, or is this open county-wide? How does that operate?
Thank you, Mayor. Excellent question. Our homeless service delivery system is organized by service planning area, of which there are 8 in Los Angeles County. The San Gabriel Valley, including the city of Baldwin Park, is all part of a single service planning area, which is service planning area 3. So that is the basic structure of our system. And you heard earlier in public comment from Ann Miske, who's the executive director of Union Station Homeless Services, one of the largest homeless service providers in the San Gabriel Valley. So for permanent supportive housing, we draw from within the SPA, though because the San Gabriel Valley is so large, it is divided into sub-regions. So we would anticipate that there would be a focus on people for permanent housing purposes, not exclusively from the city of Baldwin Park, but from the sub-region of the San Gabriel Valley, of which Baldwin Park, in which the city of Baldwin Park falls.
Let me ask a question. City of West Covina rejected theirs yesterday, or sometime this week they had a meeting and they had the opportunity, from my understanding, they rejected the consideration. So when we're talking sub-region, so how many cities are we talking about that it would incorporate? I mean, because my focus, I'll be honest with you though, I would prefer it be focused on residents of Baldwin Park, since we do have a major issue, and it kind of, I guess from what I'm hearing from you, so it's, well, let me just say, what is the service region that it covers?
I'm sorry, I can't tell you that.
Okay.
Those are developed by the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, and I don't have the specific breakdown. I may be able to secure that in the course of this discussion via email, but I would need to check on that. During the interim housing period, however, which would be the initial period for the utilization of the hotel or motel, there we would be focusing initially on the city of Baldwin Park, and then on the subregion. It's once the facility is converted to permanent supportive housing, then we have a rigorous prioritization approach based on providing permanent supportive housing to those individuals who are the most vulnerable and have the most acute needs. I would also say that if we were to purchase a site, and maybe Kelly Quinn could speak to this, but if we were to purchase a site in Baldwin Park that's currently functioning as a Project HomeKey site, then the site is already basically full, and people would be allowed to remain there until they were able to exit to permanent housing, at which point then another person would move behind them on an interim basis.
Sure, Phil. So let me also add that if your question is, are we applying for other hotels and other areas, we definitely are. This would not be our only application. We are looking at, upwards of maybe even 20 applications at this point, all across the county, not focused on the city of LA, but in areas that are outside of the city, including unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County.
Yeah.
In terms, yep.
I have a question, Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Alejandra Avila.
So the Motel 6 that we have here in Baldwin Park, I know we already have homeless families living there. So let's say we turn that into a project HomeKey. What happens to the homeless families that are already there?
Do you want me to answer that, Phil?
Sure.
So my understanding is if the families are at risk of being homeless, if they were to be moved out, they would be allowed to stay. They are part of the target population, so they'd be allowed to stay.
And when you go through the renovations, because eventually you have to renovate, what happens to them then?
Sure. So we would look for vacancies, kind of naturally occurring vacancies as people move on to other housing types and then renovate over time. I don't think we anticipate clearing out a building necessarily and doing it all at once. I think we have to look at that case by case.
And who manages these facilities? How are they taken care of to make sure they're up to code, that they're being kept clean? Who's going to monitor all of that?
So we'll have a homeless service provider that will be responsible for managing the site while it's interim housing, and then following the rehab when it becomes permanent supportive housing, or potentially some number of units of other permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness. Then we will have have a service provider for the permanent housing, which will include responsibility for managing the physical site. And this is the common approach that we have for the many thousands of units and hundreds of permanent supportive housing sites in effect around the county already.
Okay, another comment I have. With the results of the homeless counts this year, homeless is up 12%, and that's pre-COVID. Does the county have a plan to mitigate the homelessness already with the 12% increase prior to the COVID-19?
Well, the county has an extremely robust plan to prevent and combat homelessness. 5 years ago this month, the Board of Supervisors accepted a countywide leadership role in combating homelessness through the launch of the Homeless Initiative. And several months later, the board approved a comprehensive set of strategies to combat homelessness. And then Los Angeles County voters approved Measure H, a quarter-cent special sales tax dedicated to preventing and combating homelessness over for a 10-year period. So we have a very robust plan, and it's a plan that is resourced more robustly, much more robustly than efforts in Los Angeles County in the past to combat homelessness. And in fact, the number of people exiting homelessness into permanent housing through the countywide homeless service delivery system, funded primarily through Measure H, has doubled since the Homeless Initiative began in 2015. However, as you noted, the homeless population increased from the 2018 homeless count to 2019, again from 2019 to 2020. That's not because of limitations, primarily because of the efforts to help families and individuals exit homelessness. It's because so many people are becoming homeless in Los Angeles County that inflow, or the number of people who are newly homeless, is outpacing the number of people who can exit homelessness into permanent housing. So even though the exits from homelessness are up, the inflow into homelessness is up even more. The homeless service delivery system can somewhat influence, but only modestly influence inflow into homelessness. The key drivers of homelessness, excessive rent increases, unjust evictions, and shortage of affordable housing, these are forces that are beyond the homeless service delivery system and largely beyond the control of the county. The Board of Supervisors only has, absent the pandemic, during which the board has certain special authority, but in routine times, absent the pandemic, the county can only, for example, control rent increases for occupied units in the unincorporated areas of the county. The ability to establish rent stabilization is within the authority of each of the individual 88 cities. There have been steps, both locally and at the state level, to try to address some of these issues. But the core dynamic of too many people with not enough income to pay high and escalating rents remains as the core cause of the countywide homelessness crisis. And of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we face a risk of a tidal wave of evictions, which could in turn dramatically increase the number of people who are newly homeless in Los Angeles County. Our board is acutely aware of this, has taken action within its jurisdiction, within its authority, to try to prevent that from happening to the maximum extent possible. But ultimately, additional action will be required at the state and federal level to avoid that potential tsunami of evictions.
Thank you. And I know you said you purchased the Motel 6. Are you looking into purchasing other facilities? There's different motels or at least within our area. Have you looked at that or only the Motel 6?
Yeah, this is Kelly. I don't believe we've had another Baldwin Park property on the short list since we've been, working on this feverishly for the last 3 weeks or so.
Mm-hmm. So do you plan on looking into other properties here in Baldwin Park?
Not at this point. We're kind of running out of time. We actually are going to start submitting applications today. We need to keep doing that through the next several days so that we meet the deadline.
Mm-hmm. I know Mayor Lozano mentioned, ultimately we would prefer to house the Baldwin Park residents. And of course, that would be my goal also. But I know that when people are looking to get into housing, there's a waiting list and that they get into it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you do go by that waiting list to get them into this permanent housing once you develop the permanent housing. That's the same way you're going to be doing this. I know we're getting COVID patients in there or people at risk, but are you looking at a waiting list once it does become the permanent housing in order to get them there from this area, from the SPY Area 3?
So the waiting list you're referencing is for mainstream affordable housing, particularly for people on our waiting list to receive a Section 8 housing choice voucher. Permanent supportive housing, which is what we intend, is somewhat different in that we match people to permanent supportive housing based on their acuity. And the standard, we actually use an assessment tool that's intended to measure people's likelihood of dying on the street if they're not housed. And that's their risk of dying on the street independent of COVID. So that is the process that we would look to use. I do want to say I have reached out to see if I could get find out the exact cities that are in the Baldwin Park subregion. And I have not yet, I don't believe, received a response on that. But I did want to, here we go. I have the response. The subregion is comprised of the other cities in your subregion, I'm being informed, are El Monte, South El Monte, West Covina, Irwindale, Covina, and Duarte. And then what I wanted to share additionally is that though there are no other Project HomeKey sites, beg your pardon, there are no other hotels or motels in Baldwin Park for which we are intending to seek Project HomeKey funding to acquire them. There are quite a number of other sites in the San Gabriel Valley, and therefore there would be multiple, as there have been for Project HomeKey. And because there will be those multiple sites, some of which are in your subregion, that will sort of support people in and in the immediate vicinity of Baldwin Park having the opportunity to be housed at the Motel 6.
Okay, and I know you mentioned, or maybe you already said this, you said that you will be looking at people that are at homeless people that are at risk of dying on the streets. Now, are we looking at people that are in the hospitals only, or are we really looking into the streets? Because there may be some people that may be living under the bridge that are not seeking medical help and may be at risk of dying. How are you exactly looking for these homeless to put them in this hotel, in this HomeKey project, if let's say they're not being checked into a hospital because they don't have a way to get there? Are you going under the wash? I know LASA does a lot of visits to the homeless. I've gone out with them. So how exactly are you getting these people? And I know it's going to be from those cities that you mentioned. Is it just from the hospitals, or how are you doing it?
No, it's not focused on people in hospitals by any means. We have an assessment tool that asks people about a range of questions, and then based on that, they're assigned an acuity score, and it's people above a certain level that are eligible for permanent supportive housing. And then within that, we basically sort in order of the most acute person. So this is the countywide system for matching people experiencing homelessness to permanent supportive housing. And it is not at all focused on people in hospitals. Someone could be in a hospital at the point that they're matched, but that's very much the exception. So yes, this involves going under the bridges and engaging our outreach teams, engaging with people who are living outside, as well as people who might already be in some form of shelter, and then again matching the people who have the most acute needs to the scarce permanent supportive housing resource. Okay. But I'd like to just say more generally that Project HomeKey has really been a watershed, I believe, in terms of homeless services in the San Gabriel Valley, where there has been very much of a shortage of interim housing and permanent supportive housing in the San Gabriel Valley, particularly in the central part of the San Gabriel Valley. There has been a history of housing and services in Pasadena on the west and Pomona on the east, but everything in between, there's been very little. And we've been able to stand up quite a large number of Project HomeKey sites in the San Gabriel Valley. In fact, the number of HomeKey beds we have in the San Gabriel Valley represents the highest percentage of the homeless population in SPA 3, higher than in any of the other 7 service planning areas. And I think this has really had a positive impact in terms of homelessness in the San Gabriel Valley. Obviously, it hasn't solved the problem. It's only a modest percentage overall, despite being a higher percentage than the other SPAs. But I'm really optimistic that we'll be able to build on this experience with Project HomeKey. And as I mentioned, there are a substantial number of sites which we hope to acquire through Project HomeKey that are spread throughout the San Gabriel Valley.
Right, thank you. And again, the mayor mentioned if we could focus on the city of Baldwin Park. However, I understand, a homeless person, regardless of where they're from, and it'll be our surrounding cities, they need somewhere to stay. And when they're homeless, they eventually end up being our homeless person, because they do go from one city to another. So one day they can be in Irwindale, the next in West Covina, and then they'll be in Baldwin Park. So it's when they are homeless, it's really hard to tell what city they're from, because they're moving so much. They're just moving for where they can accommodate themselves better at that time. So I'm looking forward to this program, and I just want to make sure that the services that are being provided there are specific to the residents that move there, and that they have the full support, the wraparound services that they need so they can move ahead. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I want to continue on. For one, I am disappointed that it's not primarily concentrated in Baldwin Park. I know right now 15 family members that are about to lose their home are potentially could be homeless. Now, the unfortunate part is that the tendency here is that affluent communities like West Covina, Duarte, and those, they may not choose to go on the same route like we do. So that means that would probably be the hub for those cities, and that's very disappointing. Covina, I believe 3 weeks ago or something like that, there was an issue on the news where they were not going to allow specific individuals, and I can't recall what exactly it was, but it's disappointing. It really is, because Baldwin Park cannot be used as a hub for others. I mean, we have the people here. I want to see the ones that we have here in Baldwin Park right now housed in that particular hotel. We could fill it up and more. And of course, I support the project, but I don't like the actual how it will be managed based upon the sub-regions and so on and so forth. I mean, West Covina rejected it. I mean, what was their reason behind that? Covina. I mean, again, it's always the less affluent communities that take the vast amount of brunt, and that's unfortunate for something that I believe is a good cause for this community. But secondly, I want to know how does the city protect themselves if, say, you child molester or something like that, specific felons that potentially may be geared in that area. How is that brought in? I mean, how is that being monitored and secured for the residents of Baldwin Park? I'm kind of curious. I mean, what type of families are we talking about? I mean, or is it just targeted for families, or can someone explain that to me? Just want to make sure that we're not bringing an element that is not conducive to this community. And I know that's the reason why West Covina made their decision of rejecting or being part of this particular project that's being proposed. Can someone please answer that?
Yeah, certainly. I'm happy to address both your questions. On the question of geographic targeting, I do want to say that it cuts both ways, that people will be housed at the site in Baldwin Park who are not exclusively from Baldwin Park, but people from Baldwin Park may be housed in El Monte or in La Puente. So what I think you can expect is that Baldwin Park will get a fair share of the beds that are created through Project HomeKey in SPA 3 relative to your homeless population in comparison to other surrounding cities. So I think if you look at it more in the aggregate, that I think you can expect to sort of receive sort of that level of benefit from Project HomeKey. On your other point, what we find there's no question that there are people experiencing homelessness who have had experience with the criminal justice system. There are people who have had felonies, there are people who have been in prison. But what we find is that being housed in permanent housing is the best way to assist people who have criminal history to avoid future encounters with the criminal justice system, compared to the challenges of living in a wash or on a sidewalk with all of the stressors and challenges that entails.
So you said they're going to have wraparound services, full wraparound services for them there, mental health, medical, all of that assistance?
Absolutely. That's the way permanent supportive housing works, that we have on-site 24-hour services.
Okay. And how long what do you anticipate each family or person will be staying there?
Once it becomes permanent housing, people could stay as long as they meet the eligibility criteria and they want to remain there.
But meantime, it's a project room key that is not the permanent housing. How long will they be there until they're better or?
Okay, so just to be clear, so let's talk about the Baldwin Park site, Motel 6. It's currently functioning as a room key site. When the county purchases it, there will be a period of time, as I mentioned, until Judy is.
Sorry, Phil. It's not actually a project room key site currently.
Beg your pardon. I was perhaps misreading oh yes, beg your pardon. Thank you, I'm sorry. I had misread the subtitle on the chart. Thank you for the correction. So the Motel 6 in Baldwin Park is not currently part of the project room key. Thank you for the correction. If the county succeeds in securing state funding to acquire the site, then it will function initially as interim housing. Whether it's technically a project room key site or not will depend essentially on whether federal funding is available through FEMA to continue offsetting the service costs at the site. But whether it's technically project room key or not, it will be an interim housing site, likely until sometime in fiscal year 21-22, at which point we envision that the rehab would occur, as I mentioned, to convert the site into permanent housing.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask
Mayor,
Yes.
can I ask some questions here?
Sure.
And I think Paul would probably like to ask some questions, Councilmember Hernandez. Then
hold on.
Thank you. And then of course we'll go around, right?
Yeah, just make sure I have to go ahead. I didn't know you.
Yes, thank you. So Phil and Kelly, this is Monica Garcia, council member. And this is an item that obviously was rushed onto the agenda. And I did review the briefing that staff sent to us. But I'm still trying to understand, what is the ask of us, or is this for information purposes only?
This is actually for informational purposes.
Okay.
Under the state law, there's not a formal role. Under the state law that was enacted as part of the new state budget that created Project HomeKey, the sort of normal city role around land use approval that is not applicable to Project HomeKey.
Yeah, okay. And council member, I'd like to add, again, this is Judy Vasquez with Supervisor Solis's office. The supervisor was just very interested in providing as much information as possible to Baldwin Park as a partner, as a city that has been working closely with the county on homelessness related efforts. And so we wanted to share with you and provide an opportunity for you to provide feedback and ask questions. But the supervisor is very interested in moving forward with this project alongside and hopefully with the support of Baldwin Park.
Okay, so okay, that's a good starting point. I think that what you'll find from the council is that we have encouraged the collaboration with El Monte, South El Monte. We have had our staff be very active in trying to find solutions for our city, for this region, working with the COG. And I think in concept, yes, we do want to see, let me speak for myself. I want to see projects that do house the homeless population. Specifically, if it's in Baldwin Park, it would be nice to have those that are housed be from Baldwin Park, because we do, as you know, based on the count from LASA, we have a growing population. And we are trying to work collaboratively with regional government bodies to identify solutions. And so we recognize we have the wash along that divides us and El Monte. And so there is that shared population in many ways. But that said, we do have within Baldwin Park, we do have a growing homeless population. And so I think, you know, the concerns that the mayor expressed are very valid, you know, in a collaborative way. And I wonder if we can identify a certain percentage of individuals that could be from Baldwin Park, or, you know, even from this region. Again, we are working with South El Monte and El Monte very closely. And so just being a little bit more focused, like micro focused to this region, if we are going to look at a prime commercial property for the city and consider that for an affordable homeless project, you know, we would like to, in a collaborative spirit, have a very direct benefit in our city. And I think that you can understand why we would want that. The other thing that I wanted to contribute to the conversation is we do have additional motels that run along the 10 freeway. And it just seems to me, if there is an opportunity, I know that there's a time constraint, but if there's an opportunity for us to engage in any conversations, it sounds like there could be there could be a greater opportunity in another area of our city, and you may or may not be aware of it, but there's, I want to say at least 2, maybe 3 hotels along the stretch that's off the 10 freeway between, I want to say, like Foster and the 605 freeway. And I don't know if that could provide a little, you know, a little area to consider for the HomeKey projects, but also, you know, kind of part of the larger plan. I don't know how many units each of those hotels or motels have, but again, I don't know what the time constraints are, but they seem like they would be a good opportunity and also viable. To me, it seems like it would be very viable economically, because Motel 6, they do well. They, I don't know how inclined they are to sell their property. You would know, because you have been part of those conversations. There are some motels that seem like they would be good candidates that I just kind of looking, you know, scanning the community. And it seems like they could be viable because they're not as prominently placed, you know, next to the 10 freeway. They probably don't bring in the revenues that Motel 6 does, and they probably would be more open. I don't know. But I just share that for some options. And again, to go back to the viability, I think I look at Motel 6 and I can see why the supervisor and the governor would like that property, because it is a prime property. It's a prime commercial, regional commercial property. And I don't know if Motel 6 would really move forward, you know, given that they are sitting on a prime commercial property and they probably bring in some good revenues. Do you know anything about those conversations?
Yes, I do. Yeah, we do have a commitment from the Motel 6 Corporation to sell the Baldwin Park site. And in fact, the Motel 6 Corporation is generally willing to sell any of the corporate owned as opposed to franchised, which they don't control at corporate level for this purpose. But yes, I mean, we're going forward on that basis. With respect to the other sites you've mentioned, as Kelly referenced, we have a full list at this point for our initial round of applications, which we have to submit by August 13th. Depending on how that all comes together, it's not inconceivable that we could pursue an additional round of applications thereafter, though we've not made a decision to do that. If you wanted to provide us with, or perhaps to the supervisor's office, the sort of the names of the sites you have in mind, we could certainly take that into consideration. But I want to be clear that it's not a given that we would pursue any additional sites and beyond what's on our current target list.
Right. No, I hear you. Okay. So my next question is, I did see that, okay, the state is allocating the funding to the county, and then the county through your office, Phil, I guess Kelly as well, right? You're part of the same office. You are working to, I guess, secure these properties with a developer. Will your office also administer the program moving forward, including like the wraparound, or what is the model around that?
Certainly. So there's best to think about this in 3 phases. So during the interim housing period, that's before rehab, the county would either most likely through the Department of Health Services, would contract with a homeless service provider to operate the site, either through the Department of Health Services or through the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority. Then we would secure a developer to undertake the renovations. And then after that, we would have a homeless service provider who would operate the site pursuant to a contract with the Department of Health Services.
In the long term.
In the long
Okay.
term. And that's the way we do it now for all the permanent supportive housing where the county provides the services. We have the Department of Health Services has a contract with an established homeless services provider.
Okay. Okay. And then as far as identifying the occupants, I know you gave an explanation, and I'm sorry. Can you repeat that for me? How you identify the occupants?
Sure. So for interim housing, this in the initial period would be trying to focus on people who are COVID vulnerable, because it looks like the pandemic is going to be still very much with us as of January, absent something miraculous happening. So we would be targeting people over 65 or who have health conditions that make them particularly vulnerable should they contract COVID. Then as we convert the site to permanent housing, to the extent it's permanent supportive housing, as I mentioned, we would be looking to offer the permanent supportive housing to people who have the most acute needs and for the intensive level of support that permanent supportive housing offers. Again, certainly within service planning area 3, and then more focused even within spot 3 in your Baldwin Park and the surrounding communities. That said, we certainly would never displace someone who was using the site as a shelter before rehab back onto the street. So that would all be part of the planning process. And some of the people who are in the site as interim housing may very well qualify for permanent supportive housing and could choose to become tenants and live at the site on an ongoing basis if that was their preference.
Okay. Is there any way that we can work with the supervisor's office, with the LA County, with your office, to look at the existing population in Baldwin Park? Does that go against any laws?
Well, they're certainly eligible. To the extent they're otherwise eligible, people in Baldwin Park would be within the geography for the site. I mean, I think on your question of a set aside, I guess I just want to encourage you to think about the flip side of this, that there will be multiple other sites in the San Gabriel Valley where Baldwin Park residents could also go. So, and there's about 30 cities in the San Gabriel Valley, and there's too many cities for there to be homeless facilities, whether they're interim housing or supportive housing, in all of them. So we have to take a regional approach. That said, I think we can definitely collaborate with the city to identify people who are homeless in your city that you think would be a good fit, whether for interim housing, where there are not the eligibility criteria are much broader, or for permanent supportive housing after rehab.
Yeah, I would certainly appreciate that. Again, because we do have a growing population if you look at our LAHSA numbers. And yeah, I think that would be a win-win, because if you look at it from the city's standpoint, you know, we do want to be part of the solution. We are making efforts. We are contributing to a regional, you know, solution. But we lose a prime, regional commercial site, and you know, a little bit. I don't know. Does the TOT apply there? So as a win-win, I think it would be, you know, in the spirit of collaboration to do something like that. And I get what you're saying, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to create an impediment to that regional solution. I just think, okay, this site it's gonna be in Baldwin Park, and so it would be a win-win if we could house, you know, homeless that are in our city currently, and work with you to identify those. So I would certainly appreciate that.
I think that I'll say I really appreciate your comments, and as we worked with Supervisor Solis's office and the other two supervisors that represent portions of the San Gabriel Valley, we've been very sort of cognizant about this dynamic of the need, particularly with so many small cities, to have a regional approach, and at the same time, the very understandable interest among cities that may host homeless service sites to serve their homeless residents. What I'd like to say in this situation is that we really have an advantage in that we'll have multiple sites coming online on basically the same timeline in the San Gabriel Valley, similar to what's happened in Project HomeKey, where we had quite a large number of sites in San Gabriel Valley come on within a very short period of time, which enabled the sites to kind of focus in their more immediate vicinity. So what I can commit to is that we will take an equitable approach to the utilization of this resource, which will be multiple sites in the San Gabriel Valley, assuming that we secure the state funding for multiple acquisitions in San Gabriel Valley. And I'm very optimistic that that will be the case. And then I think there is a middle path here. There is a path that is there's kind of a continuum. One end of the continuum is a strictly spa-wide approach without regard to any level of sub-spa geography. That's kind of one end of the continuum. Another end of the continuum is reserving beds only for the city where the site is housed. We're going to be somewhere in between those 2 points of the continuum. And I know that Supervisor Solis and her colleagues that represent the San Gabriel Valley are very sensitive to the interest in San Gabriel Valley. And we'll all work together, including with the San Gabriel Valley COG and the San Gabriel Valley Consortium, to come up with an approach here that addresses the kind of the range of needs and interests. And fortunately, we'll have a good amount of time to do that, because again, this issue of the sort of who gets to live in the sites is principally an issue once we're in the permanent housing phase. And that is probably about close to 2 years from now.
Okay. And then my last question is, you mentioned some other sites that might be coming online. Do you have an idea where those are sited currently in this region, in SPA 3?
Well, I just want to be respectful of the dynamic with the other cities. And I just don't know exactly what the level of communication has been, but I can tell you that there are other sites. I can tell you the number of sites in SPA 3. On our current target list, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks like there are 5 SPA 3 sites. So that's quite a good number. That's a disproportionate number relative to the distribution of the homeless population.
Bill, and can we also share a little bit about how we don't expect to be able to actually acquire for every single property that we put forward to the state?
Yeah, certainly. We don't have a guaranteed allotment. So we don't want to sell ourselves short. So we will apply for sort of the most that we can put together with willing owners, given the time frame. And yeah, we would be surprised if all of our applications were approved, just based on the amount of money that we'll be seeking.
Okay, well, thank you for those answers. And Mayor, I'll give the floor back to you.
Okay, anyone else? Vice Mayor, did you want to say?
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Phil and Kelly. I don't know if you want to take a sip of water there, Phil, because you've been speaking for quite some time. But again, thank you for everything that you guys are doing. I'm very much interested in the program in which you guys are facing. Similar to the questions that some of my council members have mentioned. Historically, as communities of Brown have always been essentially, given the raw end of the deal. And I certainly want to make sure that that is not happening in our own city. And I know that's something that's very sensitive to our supervisor, and I know that's not her intent. But I just want to make sure, and we're really clear about that's not happening for us, or within our city. We have other local cities, as the mayor mentioned, Covina. It sounded, I don't know, but it sounded as they were not in favor of this. But as you were talking about equity, Phil, you mentioned that you will continue to look at that as a commitment to all of us. And I hope that you will be able to move forward, whether sometimes they want it or not, right? Because at the end of the day, these type of programs are what's going to uplift our entire region and our community. So with that said, I just want to get a little bit more information in regards to the type of service and not so much expectation. I really want a commitment in and around the type of service providers that will deal with any type of community issues that come along in and around this facility, whether it's Motel 6 or another one off the 10 freeway, but primarily we're talking about Motel 6 area. Because again, people are going to be out in the streets. We're not expecting them to be in their rooms all 24 hours and so forth. Across the street, we have a Home Depot, we have a Walmart, and so forth. My thing is, one of my concerns is, I do not want our police department to be dealing, to be responding to these type of, complaints or any type of issues, because that's not what the police department's role is, right? Especially if we're talking about, restructuring, policing, right? Because, they're essentially, our social workers by default, right? So will the service providers have 24-hour operators and staff that will be able to go out and respond to these calls that perhaps, the city's 911, dispatch calls that they can call over there and have those be resolved at that level?
Yes, we can absolutely commit to having 24-hour on-site provider staff, both during the interim housing period and post-rehab once the site is permanent supportive housing.
Perfect. And that's in regards to, like I said, if there's an issue, if there's somebody going on or something's happening, you know, a couple blocks away, you know, I'm not talking about everywhere in the city, but at least right now, a couple blocks away, you know, near or in and around the neighborhood, they'll be able to respond to that, you know, in a 24-hour periods?
Well, certainly they're responsible for any issues that happen on the site.
I understand.
So that is their focus. I mean, if there's anything that requires sort of law enforcement involvement, that is appropriate, or paramedics, that's an appropriate 911 response. But I can tell you that our experience, I mean, we have many, many thousands of people in the county in both interim housing and in permanent supportive housing. And sort of consistently, the effect of interim housing, permanent supportive housing, is to reduce the demand on 911 services for obvious reasons, because people who are not living on the sidewalk are less likely to have issues that require a 911 response. And then particularly once the site is permanent supportive housing, it will be like an apartment building. It really will be an apartment building. The only difference is that it will be a converted motel. So it'll look different than most apartment buildings do. But that's what you're gonna find.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And, you know, given that, you know, there may be, you know, if the site is acquired, you know, we'll essentially have space there for, you know, permanent and interim housing. Can we, you know, ensure that we can have a LASA team, you know, based out of there, or have space available for them so they can deal with, you know, issues in and around not only Baldwin Park, but the rest of the region as we move forward? You know, something to think about. Because again, if you have space, that's something that's, you know, if we could have, you know, for us to be able to contact, or the community, or whatever the case may be, it's just easier if we have folks that are based in the community, working in the community, if you know what I mean.
And when you say LASA team, are you referring to outreach?
Their outreach team, absolutely.
I see. So, so the contracted service provider, once it's permanent supportive housing, will be a contractor of the Department of Health Services, like Volunteers of America or Union Station Homeless Services, for example, which are the two largest homeless service providers in the San Gabriel Valley. Our outreach teams are, they're both outreach staff with LASA, but we also have multidisciplinary teams funded through Measure H, which are contractors of the Department of Health Services. And they also function on a spa-wide basis and a sub-spa basis. So my guess is that we would not want to sacrifice a unit that could be used for housing at the Motel 6 to house outreach staff. But to the extent that there is others office type space, that's a possibility. That's not something that I could commit to. But again, I want to be clear that our outreach resources function on a spa basis and a sub-spa basis, not on an individual city basis.
Thank you.
I'll also
I'm sorry. Go on.
To add to your question, council member, we actually do have LASA outreach teams that are co-located at our South Almani office, our regional field office. So again, like Phil said, if there's office space available, actually the LASA ERTs welcome having that kind of space available so they don't have to traverse the San Gabriel Valley, which we know can take sometimes hours in the right or the wrong traffic. But that is a possibility, and we'd be happy to work with the city if that's something that it's interested in.
At least for myself, and, you know, like I said, we could have that, you know, as Councilmember Garcia talked about, is, you know, that ongoing dialogue as we, you know, really flush out, you know, the details, you know, if we get this approved, obviously, right? So I do appreciate that. The one other thing, Phil, you know, we did mention about the sex offenders, and I think that was something that the mayor asked. You know, I think, you know, for us, and something of a concern for me would be to, you know, ensure that at least for our community, right, is that we don't have any, sex offenders that are tier 3 or 2. Tier 3 is, our, life registered sex offenders. And because again, these are concerns not only on myself, but also concerns that, I hear from the community and residents. And so that's just, something that, if we can continue to have that ongoing dialogue around that issue, I would certainly appreciate it. And then
so can I
yes, please.
I could speak to that. So anyone who's a registered sex offender in California that is subject to any restrictions on where they can live, such as proximity to a school or a childcare center or a park, those are applicable. There's no exception to that for permanent supportive housing or for interim housing. So those restrictions apply. And I don't know specifically what the proximity is of this particular site to any of those protected locations. To the extent that someone is a registered sex offender, however, and the site, they're not precluded by virtue of the terms of their registration from the site, then they would not be excluded from this site. And again, I want to kind of reiterate the point I made before, that a person who experiencing homelessness, who has a criminal justice background, including people who are registered sex offenders, are much more likely to not engage in future criminal behavior if they have housing than if they are living on the street. If we as a system excluded from housing, as a homeless services system, excluded people who are registered sex offenders, then what we would do is we would ensure that there would be even larger numbers of people who are registered sex offenders living in the communities, in our communities, unsheltered. So we don't want that. So we definitely are committed to the sort of ensuring that any services we provide address the needs of the both the people experiencing homelessness and the communities where they live, whether it's in interim or permanent housing. But the sort of kind of categorical exclusion you're talking about that would is not something that we could incorporate in our system, with the caveat, however, of course, that any otherwise applicable restrictions under state law continue to be applicable to homeless services sites.
Thank you for that. But I just want to be really clear about this. Whether it's the interim or the permanent housing, not only will I, but I guarantee you several other community members will go onto the database and they will look to see if how many people are housed in that location. And if there is a vast majority of folks that are registered sex offenders, we're going to have community issues and you're going to have problems. So I'm just saying, I just want to be fair about it. Okay.
There's certainly no intention of seeking a concentration of residents who would be registered sex offenders.
Look, I've worked in government over 20 plus years. I know what we say and I know what actually happens sometimes in the past. Not to say that that's going to happen here, but I just want to be very clear about that.
Fair enough.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next one. And really my last question is, Council Member Avila, and I think even, Monica, Garcia, and even the mayor have touched base on this. We here in Baldwin Park, we use, obviously the hotels for emergency, hotel vouchers and programs of that nature. If there's a way of having, if we could have some sort of expectation where we could set aside, a true set aside for these, emergency, relocation for individuals, whether it's domestic violence or whatever the case may be, that would certainly help us. Because right now, we put some of those folks up in, say, in another hotel, but there's no services there for them, right? So the reason I'm very adamant of trying to work towards a set aside, and it doesn't have to be a very large one. We can actually work with the city and staff to understand, what is that actually, the peaks and valleys of that. But again, if there's somebody that's trying to seek shelter, or someone that we're trying, the police department or our domestic violence program or another nonprofit organizations that we have here, or the church, is trying to, move somebody into a, short-term living situation, very short-term, right? It's not to take away and to have them there, stay there permanently, but putting them in an environment that fosters, care and love, and services such as, what your service providers do on a daily basis, I think makes sense. And it's something that I can certainly sell to the community and the residents, a block away, going, look, this is not only helping the, folks that are, during the COVID and so forth, but also the permanent, but also when we have these, encounters with folks out in the community, we at least know that we can do that. And it's not just for us too, right? It's, like you said, it's our sub-region of, El Monte, South El Monte, those folks too. Having that set aside for those 3 folks, for those 5 communities that you mentioned, I assure you will be used constantly and would be very helpful. Because then again, we, all 3 of us, but mostly our community, the 5 cities and plus our community will understand that this is a place of safety and of nurture. And that will go a long way for us. So if that could, if you can continue to put that on your expectations, leaning more towards commitment area, we would appreciate it as we move forward with this discussion, of course.
Sure. So let me say that I think we have a model in Pomona that might be of interest to you, where the beds that the county funds are not restricted geographically to the city where the site is located. But in Pomona, at their big interim housing site, they fund themselves the operations of a certain number of beds. And I believe those beds are only for placement by their police department. It might be police and fire, perhaps, or maybe just the police department. And Leticia Colchado from our team, whom some of you may know, is listening in, and she's our, we have a liaison from our team for all 88 cities in the county. And Leticia is the liaison from Baldwin Park and a San Gabriel Valley resident herself. And she noted that through the Measure H funding that the city of Baldwin Park has received from the county, which is through June of 2021, that a portion of your funding is for motel stays. So I think that during the interim housing period, once the county acquires a site, if the city wanted to essentially sort of fund the service costs for some number of beds, that we could definitely work together around earmarking those number of beds. That would be more on the kind of a shorter term basis, like you were saying. Once the site is rehabbed and converted to permanent housing, I don't really see that as a continued viable option. But again, that would be sometime into 2022 in all likelihood.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I'll give it back to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Judy.
Mayor, can I have one more comment, please? Thank you. First of all, Phil and Kelly, thank you for all the wonderful information. I feel that we have too many homeless, and like you said, the homeless population is increasing. But I also want to remind everybody that all the homeless they come from different walks of life. And I've met a lot of them. A lot of them hold regular jobs like we do. Unfortunately, they have no place to live. We're stigmatizing them by saying that they may be criminals, they may be rapists, but in reality, they're regular people like us that either lost their home because loss of a job, because of illness, now maybe because of COVID. They have families. And I've met these people. I've met them under the bridge. I've talked to them. I've been to Mars Place in Pasadena. It's a beautiful place where they live now. They were homeless at one point, and Mars Place has given them the opportunity to get back on their feet, to go to school, to get a job, and take pride in having a home now. But I just want to say that it hurts me to hear that, you know, they're rapists or homeless, they're criminals. Maybe some of them, yes. But we need to try to stay away from stigmatizing the homeless because they're not all like that. They just need help. They need to help guidance on how to get back on their feet. And so as a community, I feel that we need to be there for them. I know West Covina rejected the project, but they don't have the heart that Baldwin Park has. And we definitely want to make a difference to the homeless community, and if possible, avoid other families from being homeless. And I hear what the mayor is saying, that if we could get more of our families in these places, it would be wonderful, because we know of families, the mayor knows of families, I work for the school district, Ms. Jean works for the school districts, of people that have gone homeless under our watch, and there has been nowhere for us to place them. There was this lady in Victoria that, thank you to Father Mike, they found a place for her all the way in Long Beach, and she still commutes to Baldwin Park to attend church. But I hear you, Mayor. I wish we could get all of Baldwin Park residents, but if we can make a difference in more homeless, and let's just remember, they're people like us, down on their luck. They're not all drug addicts or criminals. So I look forward to hopefully starting something, and that we can continue and help people get their lives back on track. Thank you, Phil and Kelly.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else have any other input? Okay, I just want to end by saying again, I think this an opportunity to address the homeless. Now, if it was up to me, I would put all of Baldwin Park homeless that we have. There's supposedly 500 that were calculated by the county, even though I differ, and some of us differ with that actual number, which I think it's a lot less. I would put them all in there. Baldwin Park first, just like West Covina first, and all our neighboring cities. And I'm just kind of curious what the more affluent communities will do in their immediate vicinity, because Baldwin Park, again, has always been on the forefront when it comes to addressing the needs of our community. There's a lot of homeless families in Baldwin Park, and I wish it was focused on Baldwin Park residents that are in dire need. But this is the way the county is going to be managing, and I understand it's a regional. So I want to thank each and every one of you. Please thank the supervisor, Judy, for taking this opportunity. She's always been on the forefront in addressing the needs of the county, and we understand. So I want to thank everyone that participated here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity, and it's just great to see the elected leadership of the city that has this sort of perspective and heart and compassion that you do. And as I mentioned before, I feel like Project HomeKey has been a really significant opportunity to increase homeless services in San Gabriel Valley. We're going to build on that with Project HomeKey. And I'm sure that Baldwin Park will be a very significant contributor to the ongoing strengthening of the homeless service delivery system throughout the San Gabriel Valley.
Mayor.
Yes. Councilmember Monica. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to provide some closing remarks for our conversation. And again, we'll thank Phil and Kelly for the presentation, as well as Judy for bringing this information to us. And please thank the supervisor for this briefing. I do want to express that the City of Baldwin Park, we want to work collaboratively with the supervisor on this and other projects. And we have had that wonderful relationship for many years. And so I do want to express that homelessness is an important issue in our community. Affordable housing is an important issue. And I think that we've tried to be very progressive. We've tried to be part of the solution. And that is represented and reflected in our collaboration with the South Omani and Omani, and even with the COG. And so this would be just one more step in that direction. I do want to share that there is sensitivity, that you're speaking to a community that has has dealt with social justice, environmental justice issues, and the supervisor is well aware of it. So if we raise any concerns about, the occupancy, it's only because, and I think you could understand this, Phil, this is part of the process, right? We all want to develop healthy, sustainable communities that, can become self-sufficient. And in this case, we're talking about a homeless population. So I think we do desire that. I think we also want to be careful about the impacts, in our community, and we want to work, like I said, collaboratively, like we always have, with the supervisor, with your office, Phil, with you, Kelly, and really, put our heads together and really come up with a project that's going to even be greater than if it was just the state and county doing it alone. I think that, that would be the win-win for our city. And also keep in mind that, we will lose TOT from this, as I mentioned earlier, probably to the tune of about $30,000 a year. And we will lose a prime regional commercial property. But I do want to express that we do want to be part of the solution. And I just hope that at the end of the day, like Councilmember Hernandez alluded to, that it is a real win-win, a gem, not only for the regional solution, but also for our community. And that's all.
All right, thank you. Once again, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All righty. Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. If there's nothing else on that item, we're going to ask to hold over the affordable housing presentation. It was informational only. Benjamin Martinez has sent everybody information on that. He can contact you at another time if there's questions, but we're running low on time, so we wanted to move into closed session, if that's okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, council member.
Just really quickly, just again to show our commitment, do we want to just draft a quick letter of support for this, so that could also go along with the program or application that they're doing?
I think so. I think that would be, it would make, yes.
So we could ask Shannon or Ben or whoever's in the lead on that to just kind of do that, unless there's any objections from the council members. I think they could just move forward with it tomorrow.
Sounds good. Yes, let's do that. I think that would definitely be a good idea. All right, so at this point, we're going to go into closed session. So are we signing out here? Is that what we're doing? Are we staying on?
Yes, we will need to sign off and sign back in on the closed session meeting.
All right, thank you.
Good night, everyone. We look forward to getting your letter of support.
Thank you, Judy. Appreciate that.
Thank you.